Welcome to Behind the Story with Naomi and Lisa, where we learn the story behind the story. I'm Naomi Craig, historical fiction author of Rahab's Courage.
And my name's Lisa Renee from the Collaborative Press. We help authors self-publish, and I'm also a contemporary women's fiction author. Now, last episode, we had the wonderful Christine Dillon, a fellow Australian, and she was giving away an audiobook of one of her books, and the winner is announced in our show notes, which is just allowing a little bit extra time, but by the time this publishes, we will have drawn the winner. So congratulations, check those show notes out. So Naomi, what have you been up to this week?
Oh, I got my edits, my first round of edits back for Rahab's Courage. So I've shelved everything else and I have 2 weeks to get through that. So it's pretty
Wow.
exciting. It feels, I don't know, it doesn't seem very hard. So I think that's because you all in my critique group did
Oh, yes. We did such
such
a
a
good job.
such a
We made
fine job
it.
on no, but I'm enjoying reading it. It's like, wow, this is a good story. I like it.
Yeah, that's it. It is. Great.
What are you working on these days, Lisa?
Okay, so last I was talking about, I was trying out speech to text with my fourth in the series of the Single Again series, No Filter. So yeah, I was sort of motivated to do some exercise and do speech to text, but I wasn't really getting out for the walks as much as I wanted with the weather changes and things like that. Sometimes it'd be too hot, and then we're having rain at the moment. So anyway, I just disciplined myself just to do it where I'm lying down or walk around in my bedroom or whatever. So surprisingly, I just put it onto a document, trying out Scrivener, and it was 16,000 words. So just on the few times that I've been recording. So I'm like, yes, that saves screen time for me and less back pain or neck pain. So that's one of the big reasons, motivations to do that. So that's been good.
Wonderful. You're a quarter of the way there. That's excellent. And that's good because you released in June. So,
Yep.
it's good to have. All right. So in the last couple of episodes, we've had some wonderful Australians on recently. So now it is time for me to squeeze in fellow Arizonan, fellow biblical fiction author Dana McNeely. Dana dreamed of living in a world teeming with adventure, danger, and romance, but she had a problem. She also needed a lot of peace and quiet. She learned to visit the dream world by stepping into a book. Better yet, hundreds of books. Soon she began writing her own stories, fact and fiction. Her new release, Rain, spins the tale of Elijah, a mysterious prophet, a desperate youth, and a relentless queen. Dana, welcome to Behind the Story. Now, your publishing journey is rather unique. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
I worked on Rain for several years and it was very polished. And I even worked with an independent editor on it. And I started entering it in contests. And one year I did fairly well and got a lot of remarks back and applied, changes based on that feedback. Entered again the next year. And the next year I won in a contest, the Oregon Christian Writers Contest. And I thought, oh, now I'm on my way. I'll go to another conference, try and sell this book again, and now it's going to sell. No, it didn't. Same thing. People said, oh yeah, let me see it, send it to me. And then the answer was always no. So a few more years went by and I got to the point where I tried some other genres. I tried writing cozy mystery. I got a short story published in an anthology, and I thought, well, maybe it's going to be cozy mysteries. But even though I tried to write more, I just wasn't as interested in cozy mysteries. I liked Rain. I thought about writing another one, and I thought, why should I write another book when nobody wanted this one? And I know it was a good story, at least it was the best I could do. Couldn't do any better with another one. Why waste another few years writing it? So I think I just kind of talked myself into quitting writing. And I had decided that I was going to retire that year and I wasn't going to write anymore. And my husband and I were going to travel. and do some fun things. Well, it wasn't too many days after I decided to quit writing that I was kind of browsing through Facebook, and I got one of those pings you get when you get a message. And I thought, oh no, it's one of those, hi, how are you? So first I get the hi, and then I got, are you the Dana McNeely who wrote Rain? And if so, have you sold it yet? And I went, huh. And so I said, yes, I am. No, I haven't. And she goes, well, why not? That was a wonderful book. I was a judge that judged it in the Oregon Christian Writers. She said, I told my publisher about your book. She's interested in seeing it. I think if you query her, she'll ask for the manuscript. So I did. And in about a month from then, I had a 2-book contract with Mountain Brook Inc. And I really couldn't be happier. It's a really nice small press. They're like family. They've helped me through beautiful cover, great editing job. So it's been a delight to work with them.
Rain released March the 5th. Tell us about the book and what sparked the story.
Well, what sparked the story, a lot of readers, when they're reading the Bible, will have a verse jump out at them. So I was reading in 1 Kings, the stories of Elijah. And when I came to the part where Elijah went to visit the widow of Zarephath, the first thing that jumped out at me was him asking her for her last little bit of bread. Bring me the cake of bread first, he says, which I thought, isn't that a little rude? And then the next thing he says, but don't worry about it. God will see that the flour does not run out, nor will the oil run dry. And so that was miracle number one. And I started to wonder about that. What happened after that miracle? You know, how was that widow affected by what happened? How was her son affected? And so the second miracle was when the widow's son sickened and died. And the widow came to Elijah and said, what have you done to me, man of God? Have you come here to remind me of my great sin and slay my son? And then Elijah took the boy up to his little room on the rooftop of that house, and he prayed before the Lord really fervently. And he said, Lord, why have you taken this widow's son? She was good to me, and now he's died. Lord, bring this boy back to life. And the Lord was gracious, and he did bring the boy back to life. Well, I thought about that too, and I just imagined myself in that boy's body, opening my eyes and coming back from the other world. And I just thought, what an amazing thing. How would he have been changed by that? He must have been terrified when he saw all the sights and sounds of, of Hades. And then to come back and live again, he must have been so grateful that he had escaped that. Then who was his mother? And why did she say, have you come to remind me of my great sin? What kind of a great sin could she have had? Well, I started to think about the history of the times and the idol worship that was going on, and even child sacrifice at the time. And so a lot of things started to come to my mind about the fact that this woman could have been a priestess. If she was a priestess, then her son might have very well been a young boy in the temple of Melkart, one of the Baals. So that's how the story came to pass, and that was the spark.
I'm curious. You've got some pretty big names endorsing Rain. That's amazing. How did you get Misu Andrews, Rachel Hauk, and Angela Ruth Strong? And I know there's a whole list of others. How did you get all of these big names to endorse you as a debut novelist?
Well, for one thing, Angela Ruth Strong was the one who found my book. And I don't know if you've heard the Chinese proverb, if you save someone's life, then you're responsible for it. So I don't think it's quite the same thing maybe for writers, but I think at least there's a rule that if you hunt somebody down, you have to endorse them. So that's how I got Angela. Misu, a wonderful woman, has been so kind to me over the years. I started reading her books with her debut. And I was reviewing every one of her books and in her launch groups. And 2 or 3 times during the years, I would email her and say, did you ever run into this? And what did you ever do about that? And she was always so kind. And when I asked her if she would endorse Wayne, she agreed. She's just a wonderful person. And Rachel also, such a giving and sharing person. When I was in the group, my book therapy, she mentored me and 2 others for about a year. And Rain was the book I was working on at the time. And even though Rachel writes, more romance, she was very kind and had a lot of helpful remarks for Rain. And so she also agreed.
So we did have opportunity to get input from readers about burning questions that they needed to know. First off, we've got Era Lee wants to know, what is the inspiration for Rain?
Well, let's see. I already told that one. The inspiration was the Bible verse and how I was inspired by the miracles. And I'll just say too that the miracles, they give you that invitation into talking about the spiritual realm. And I think every person longs to have spiritual knowledge and understanding. And when you can talk about that in a book, it's just really a very special thing. So that was something that called to me in that case. But I wonder, now that we're talking about what was the spark, I'm kind of wondering how you two girls got going with your YouTube show.
Well, Lisa had the idea. She both, so there's 4 of us, 5 of us in our critique group. And Lisa and I are both the least camera shy. We've both had drama experience.
We're both drama queens.
Yeah, we're a little,
we're a bit dramatic.
So she said, "Hey, come on, let's do." Actually, it started out with her just interviewing me and me interviewing her about what we were currently working on, and I count that, Lisa, all of our little practice runs. But I think that really goes to use your strengths. Marketing is a bear. Like if you're trying to be everywhere at every time, you're gonna burn out and it's not going to be any fun. So use your strengths, use what you're good at. And I think for me, is, the video, I'm comfortable on camera, I'm comfortable talking. And if I can boost that platform, then I'm going to be a lot more comfortable and happy with it than trying to get a post everywhere to every platform, if that makes sense. That's my that's my story. Lisa, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I think it's a whole thing about community, helping each other out, and we learn from authors, their journey, and readers want to know, how they come up with the ideas in the first place. So yeah, so it's good to connect with people, and it's been really good for Naomi and I to get one-on-one time with people and know more of the Christian authors rather than just seeing their name online and seeing their books, but actually getting to know them on a more personal level. So we had some other questions. We have answered this one already, so we'll skip this one. But Shonda wanted to know, how did you get started in your career, Dana? So we've sort of answered that. Naomi, do you want to answer the next one?
Yeah, Alana wants to know, wants to know, what do you most relate to about any of the characters in your book?
Surprisingly, I relate to each and every one of my characters, even Jezebel and even the Ravens. So maybe it's not that surprising though, because you're writing each one of them and you have to get inside their head. But if I had any of a favorite, I think it would be Abon, the young boy. And I think it was because of his longing to know God. He longed to know God from the very beginning, even though in the beginning he thought he longed to know Baal Melkart, because he was in line to become the high priest, and he was very anxious to go through the ceremony that would put him into the deepest realm of the religion where he would have access to the magic and the miracles and intimacy with the God. And that's what he wanted very badly. And, I don't think he realized exactly how much he wanted that until he saw that the God had no power. When the prophet Elijah came into the temple and overturned the idol, and nothing happened to, to punish the prophet Elijah for that act. And so at that point, when he saw that that prophet was so powerful and that the rain god did not, give any kind of retribution, he realized that maybe he was on the wrong path. And he followed Elijah out of curiosity. I resonated with Abban the most because of his desire to be close to God, because I think we all have that longing for spiritual intimacy, whether we understand it or not. They talk about the God-filled hole in every person. And I think even for Christians, once we are, in touch with God, we just always want to get a little closer.
Awesome. So, yes, Elijah's one of my favorite parts of the Bible, all the stories there. So I'm definitely going to have to get to your book as soon as we get off this show. Now we got another question. Patty writes, I know that you live in the arid Southwest. How does this experience affect your writing?
In Arizona, it only is going to rain a couple inches every year. And when it does rain, all we desert rats get very excited. We want to go out in the rain. We don't use umbrellas. We just get wet and we're so happy. Nobody knows how to drive in the rain, and there's always a lot of accidents because people skid into each other. So yeah, it was very easy for me to write about the drought when I was writing rain, and to write and to imagine people, just suffering under that, arid landscape. And not only that, I talked about having irrigation here. What if there was no way of watering your crops for 3.5 years? What if you lived on crops and the food that you grew? And what if your animals ate things that grew? Pretty soon, there's nothing left to eat and people start dying. So it was easy to imagine. It was also kind of horrific. So I think it was a real punishment for the people, and they were very desperate to have an end to it. And when the end came with Elijah on Mount Carmel, it was very dramatic.
I haven't lived in the city for 8 years, so part of my time was out in like the middle of the desert. Mm-hmm. And now I have rolling hills. I call them mountains, but I've heard that Arizona is very similar mm-hmm. climate to the Middle East, to the Israel area specifically. So it's kind of like, oh yeah, I can kind of picture that. It's not too far off from what I'm right. what I'm in. Camille wants to know, what resources beyond the biblical account did you turn to for researching the time period and the setting for your story?
Well, I have 6 huge bookcases in my office. You can see a few of them over there. There's one behind me. Right to my left, there's a big double bookcase. This big double bookcase here is stacked 2 rows deep of biblical resources that I've been collecting over the last few years. I have concordances. I have 3 different study Bibles, including an archaeology study Bible. I have commentaries. I have books on, I think some of the helpful ones too, books on Samaria, books on Phoenicia. But you know what, my favorite ones here. I want to show you my favorite ones. This little book, old books, old books. Palestine and the Bible. Can you see it? And then this one by an old preacher, A.W. Pink, Elijah. And this one by another old preacher, Elijah, by F.B. Meyer. And in addition to that, I drove the interlibrary loan lady, Joan, at the public library nuts. So I've tried very hard to research deeply. Any mistakes are mine. But I've tried really hard to get the history right. And beyond that, and before that, the biblical portions right. It's very important for me to get the biblical portions right. And to that end, I read each of my study Bibles and all the notes on it before I ever start thinking of the story. And then I go to commentaries and read the commentaries. I study the timelines. Timelines are really difficult to ascertain. And I think the timelines, there's a lot of disagreement between timelines. So I try to pick out the ones that seem to make sense with what the Bible is saying happened and who was king when.
With your fictional liberties, is there anything else that you sort of make up, as in this side character or some different things that happen, or are you just staying straight with what happened in the Bible?
Is described in the Bible, I retain in my story, just as it was. And yet I do expand upon it, and I give them motivations and the reasons that I am extrapolating, or you could say fictionalizing, but I think it's more that I'm analyzing what is in the Bible and coming up with motivations that seem logical, based on what is actually in the Bible. But make no mistake, this is a story of adventure, danger, and romance. It's not a dry retelling of a Bible story. It's an expansion. The miracles are very miraculous in my story. The fire and rain on Mount Carmel, the rain afterwards, him running through the desert ahead of the chariot of King Ahab, the very wicked and very angry and very frightening Queen Jezebel with all her dark magic. There's just a lot that's there, but I am very careful to maintain the truth of the Bible. It's the most important thing to me.
Absolutely. So Nancy wants to know, what fiction techniques did you use to make the story come alive for today's reader?
So first, it's got to be the characters first. Every single character in Rain really wants something, has a great desire for what they want. Queen Jezebel, she wanted to rule her father's country, but then she got traded off to Israel. So then she wanted to rule Israel, and she wanted to get it converted to her god, Melkart, that she was a high priestess of. And, Bon, he wants to follow the prophet Elijah now, and he wants to serve the one true God. But he also fell in love with a young girl in Zarephath, and he's just, there's a situation there that causes some conflict. And each of the characters have these desires that kind of interact with each other and cause trouble, and it makes it interesting. But beyond that, I really like food. I really like beautiful landscape, and I really like animals. So I put a lot of that in my book too.
So tell us something fun or quirky about that we don't know, or that may or may not influence your writing, something people will be surprised to learn.
I am a big butterfly fanatic, and in our backyard we have tons of milkweed, we have pipevine, we have things that butterflies lay their eggs in, so we always have lots of butterfly children and grandchildren all over our yard. Yellow ones, black ones, white ones, all colors, blue, some beautiful blue butterflies. Lots of pretty butterflies.
Tell us real quick, what is your website and how readers can get in touch with you?
Okay. My website is my name, all one word, danamcneely.com. And you can get in touch with me on Facebook, again, under my name, Dana McNeely. I do have an author page, And I have a regular profile, which hasn't quite filled up yet. So either one is fine. And I love to be on, I think I'm having a lot of fun with Instagram. I'm also on Twitter. So those are my main places.
Awesome. Okay, well, we'll put all those links in the show notes. So thank you again for joining us today, Dana. We will have a giveaway for Dana's book in an ebook format. So make sure you enter that. And Naomi and I always offer our novellas. So when you sign up to subscribe to our newsletter, I've got Act 1 of Polarized Love and Naomi.
And On Desolate Heights is my biblical fiction novella. It's free to download at my website. And you can also find a freebie on Dana's as well. It's called The Eyes of the Lord, and it's a fantastic read. So make sure you're following Dana, give her a like. Thank you so much for joining us today. And until next time, let us fix our eyes on Jesus, the author and perfecter of our faith. Thanks so much for joining us.
So thank you again for joining us today on Behind the Story with Naomi and Lisa. Don't forget to click on the links and subscribe to our YouTube channels, and you'll keep up to date with our author interviews. Have a great week. God bless.